Thank you for everyone for joining us this evening. I'm Em Racine. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at Save the Dunes. I'm joined here this evening with Advocacy Coordinator Harshini Ratnayaka from Save the Dunes and two amazing folks from Hoosier Environmental Council. I'll hand it over to you, Harshini. Oh, but by the way, before we get started, the meeting is being recorded. So please know that that's happening. This video will be shared on our YouTube channel and on Facebook after the fact, and so you can share it with your networks. And any questions and comments, please leave in the chat, and we will have time to get them at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Em. So I don't know if we want to do just a quick round of introductions. So as Em said, I'm Harshini. I'm the advocacy coordinator here at Save the Dunes. Maria, did you want to just quickly introduce yourself and then we can get started? Oh, Maria, sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Maria Iturbide. I'm the Water Policy Director of Hoosier Environmental Council.
Awesome. Thank you. And David from Hoosier Environmental Council will also be joining momentarily. So without further ado, I will share my screen and we'll just get started. Okay, so as you all probably know, this is our advocacy webinar, and basically the point of this webinar today is to look ahead at 2025, specifically the state session for 2025. So we are very excited to partner with our friends at Hoosier Environmental Council, who specifically do a lot of amazing state advocacy across the entire state of Indiana. So this webinar is titled Indiana State House Informational Session. This is a recap of the previous State House session that will be the 2024 State House session, and then also looking ahead to 2025, some predictions, what we expect to see for the 2025 state session as well. Okay, so I just want to start specifically with the definition of advocacy. I know that that's a word that a lot of people just use, and sometimes it's hard to really pinpoint what exactly we mean when we talk about us doing advocacy in both of our organizations. So I just want to go through the definition real quick. So what exactly is advocacy? So advocacy is the act or process of supporting a cause or issue or proposal. So specifically at Hoosier Environmental Council and Save the Dunes, we both do environmental advocacy. So when we talk about environmental advocacy, that means that we present information on an ecological issue as a way to encourage other audiences or the general public like yourselves to adopt more environmentally sensitive practices or to get excited, to get the passion and do their own advocacy afterwards. So that's what we mean when we talk about environmental advocacy specifically. Okay, so specifically, I wanted to now turn it over actually to David and Maria, and then we're going to circle back to our organization at the end. So David, Maria, did you want to share your screen? Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Harshini, and I think that David is back.
I am back.
So I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna explain a little bit more about why it is important to do advocate. So first of all, it is a way of protecting public health. We know there are so many environmental issues around, and it is important to raise awareness and educate people about the public concern. So we need to open their eyes and share about the risk and the pushes for policies that protect communities from harmful environmental impacts leading to healthier lives. So that's one reason. Also, it is important to advocate because by doing this, we can preserve natural resources for future generations. So as you all know, we are losing our ecosystems, we are losing our forests, our wetlands. So it is important to raise the voice. It is important to promote sustainable management of natural resources like water, forest, and biodiversity, because we all depend on these resources. Nature provides ecosystem services that we all depend on: clean water, clean air. So that's why it is important to advocate for natural resources. Also, as I was mentioning, it is important because by doing so, we are preserving ecosystem and biodiversity services. What are these services? For example, in wetlands, wetlands act as sponges because they can filter water and they can recharge the aquifer. So that's one of the services they provide. They are also considered as nature's nurseries by providing critical habitat for fish, wildlife, birds, some plants, insects. They also provide they also act as kidneys as they remove pollution from the water, from the soil. So all of these are the ecosystem services that we depend on. So that is another reason why it is important to advocate for natural resources. As well, we can strengthen environmental justice and equity. So as you all know, marginalized communities, they face disproportionate environmental burden. So it is important to advocate, to raise the voice, and to share with them the importance of protecting our natural resources. And finally, because by doing so, we can influence policies and policies drive changes. It is important that we all speak up. It is important that we all get to understand what are we fighting for. We need to protect our natural resources. We need to protect our wetlands. And we need to do this not by ourselves, but in a community. So it's better when we are more people. So by this, we can influence policy and decision makers. So this is why advocacy matters. So now passing to you, David.
Thank you, Maria. That was excellent. And I think sometimes we often forget the why. We just are busy doing the thing and not thinking about the why. So again, my name is David Van Gilder. I'm the Senior Policy and Legal Director at HEC. And apparently my computer decided that technical difficulties were going to be one of the roadblocks that I have tonight. But I wanted to speak a bit about some roadblocks that all of us will face in our advocacy journey. But I'll start first by talking a little bit about just a short recap from last year, from actually earlier this year, last year's session, and where we were successful and where we had some shortcomings. And then that will lead to a discussion of where I think we're going to be going this session. So let's start with last year. We had some successes last year, and I think we would be well to pat ourselves in the back as a coalition. As Maria said, it's not just one group that's out there doing the work in the State House. There's a lot of working together, a lot of conversation between allies or among allies that helps us be successful. So on wetlands, let's start with wetlands. We had a success. Senator Glick introduced SB 246, which provided for a mechanism for owners of even very small wetland areas, half an acre or less sometimes, to be able to apply kind of through the same system that forest and other farm ground kind of reserve systems can be gain a little bit of tax advantage. So it's an incentive to preserve wetlands, and that was a bill that was introduced with some controversy, but together with allies, we shepherded that through and was passed and signed by the governor. On the flip side of the wetlands issue, there was HB 1383 that was probably in the news quite a bit from the beginning of the session all the way through its signing by the governor. That was a negative bill. Basically, it reworked some of the definitions of protected wetlands, ultimately resulting in fewer acres, gaining state protection under our state laws. So that was one that was pretty hard fought, and we were not able to defeat it in whole. We made it slightly better, but that was a negative from last year. We had some other positive things in the area of forever chemicals, PFAS chemicals. There was an ill-conceived bill that threatened to define those class of chemicals very, very broadly and then to say you couldn't, you being the state regulatory agency, IDEM, couldn't regulate them. And that was defeated. It was, again, through a coalition effort, a lot of hard work, including Representative Bauer from up there in South Bend, who helped defeat that forever chemical bill. It was called HB 1399. There was another bill that was seemed to be narrowly tailored to Indianapolis. It was about defeating the ability of bus rapid transit to use dedicated lanes in Indianapolis. The Blue Line was the specific focus. But the bill also had wide implications for the rest of the state. It basically prohibited dedicated lanes for rapid transit buses anywhere in the state. So up in the region, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Evansville, any place at Bloomington that might want to try to do a rapid transit via buses would have been impinged by this bill, and that was defeated. That was the SB 52 from last year. And the reason I'm going over these bills specifically is, frankly, we expect some version of some of these bills to resurface this coming session in some fashion. And they'll have different names, probably. They might have different numbers, but some of the effects of them might be reintroduced in this session. The last one I want to talk about was a bill that would have placed obstacles for utilities to close outdated fossil fuel generating stations like coal-fired plants. And that is one that has appeared before in the State House. We're likely to see it again coming up this session. And again, it was defeated last year. That was 1382. But we do expect that there'll be some representatives and senators who might try to put together a bill and introduce it. That again would make it more difficult for utilities to close outdated coal-fired and other fossil fuel generation stations. So that was sort of last year. And I'll pause a second in case moderators have any question they want to ask on that for the moment, or if there's anything in the chat or question and answer, happy to do so. If not, I'm just going to launch right into kind of what the Hoosier Environmental Council expects to happen this coming session. So probably the number one priority for Hoosier Environmental Council, together with other allies like Save the Dunes and Indiana Wildlife Federation and the native plant folks, advocates, is some sort of permanent mechanism to fund conservation efforts. In the past, every couple of years, most of us in the conservation community kind of go to the state legislature hat in hand saying, please give us a little bit of money for the President Harrison Trust so we can help land trust buy and preserve land. And we can help the DNR do that same thing, the Division of Nature Preserves. So what we're trying to do this year is to propose a bill that we're fairly confident will be introduced by Representative Lindauer that would carve out a small percentage of existing sales tax that's generated from the sale of outdoor recreation equipment. Your gear, your shoes, your fishing poles, the tents, camping gear, that kind of thing. Things that people use for all their outdoor recreational activities that are taxed to the retail level. And we're asking for a small carve out of some of that retail sales tax to be dedicated to conservation funding. And we estimate that if passed, that might generate somewhere between $50 and $64 million a year for conservation work, for the purchase and preservation of land, for purchase and preservation, possibly conservation easements, sort of short of fee title to land that we want to protect, to help the DNR with its backlog of restoration and just maintenance activities in the state-owned properties. So that's a really big issue for HEC this year. The coalition, the Indiana Coalition for Conservation, INCA, introduced a similar bill called HR 1376 back in 2019, and it didn't get through. But this iteration is already got some support from the Republican side of the ticket. So that might be a positive sign that we might be hearing this year and be able to push that through. With regard to water, that's another big issue. We're always looking out for concerns about wetlands. Even though the building and the industry and had kind of a win with 1383 last year, we're afraid that they might come back and try to kill wetlands legislation altogether, wetlands enforcement altogether. So we're going to be on the lookout for bills that would affect even the narrow wetlands protections that we have now. We understand there might be some tinkering on the wetlands bill that will be introduced this year. We'll look for that. We don't have any strong intel on that yet. But the other side of water that got a lot of attention last year has to do with water quantity and the need for the state of Indiana to have a statewide water resource planning, strategic planning agency or some sort of task force. So we expect to hear or see a couple of bills that might create that, a statewide water planning agency perhaps, or even a task force that would be assembled during the off season, so to speak, next summer to look at groundwater and surface water. So we're looking that might happen again. I mentioned PFAS, the forever chemical legislation that was defeated last year. We do expect there to be some more legislation in that area this year, perhaps with some regulation of biosolids, which is quite often how the PFAS chemicals get on farm ground. And so that's an issue that we may be looking at this year. We may see it. We probably will see another attempt to broadly define PFAS and try to carve out a whole set of these forever chemicals from the ability to be regulated. We're obviously will oppose that, and we'll work very hard with our coalition allies to defeat that. Every year, there's a bill that would require, with regard to septic systems, that any sale of residential property that has a private septic system, that system be inspected, and that there be notice of that. And that bill has been introduced every year and has typically been opposed by the realtors, the Realtor Association, because it would probably impede sales of many rural properties in particular. We expect to see that reintroduced again this year. Typically, when that happens, there's a countervailing bill that tries to exempt certain counties or certain portions of the state from its effect. We kind of see that every year. Last year, the General Assembly passed a pretty good bill regarding the replacement of lead service lines for residential in particular and small apartments. There might be, again, a bill that would try to expand that to provide some help for people to reduce the possibility of lead getting in their drinking water, possibly in larger apartment buildings. There might be some Further on the water issue, there might be a bill that would try to regulate significant or very large water withdrawals. If you recall, there's ongoing debate and discussion and controversy over the huge development in Boone County, the LEAP project. I think the state assembled over 10,000 acres. Eli Lilly is already building there. They're trying to attract a lot of biotech and other high-tech industry, but discovered that they don't have enough water to supply. And so there was controversy with Tippecanoe County and this LEAP project in an attempt to move water from the Wabash River aquifer down to Boone County. And so there was bills to try to prevent that. We expect that controversy will still exist, and there might be some bill in that topic this session as well. Then clean energy, that's another big HEC and likely other allies priority. With clean energy, we're always looking to try to promote agrivoltaics, that is to promote the use of solar energy in kind of a very innovative ways that farmers and other rural landowners can use, possibly combining some pollinator farming or some specific kind of growth of crops with solar panels. We expect to see some at least some bills that might help that along. Likewise, we might see a bill or two trying to promote community solar or distributed energy regions and districts. Again, HEC will be looking for those things and helping to promote them. And then overlaying all of this, of course, is the fact that it's a budget session. And just 2 days ago, the most recent budget, actually just yesterday, I think, the most recent budget projections came out, and we joke sometimes that if the projections are bad, the legislators will say, well, look, we just not enough money, we can't do any of this. But if they're good, well, same legislators will say, well, I'm sorry, we have to be conservative and hold on to all the money. So it's kind of an interesting game, but there is genuine concern and thinking from the legislators, especially the Republican or the supermajority, that money is tight and that we need to keep hold of it. And so a lot of the things that HEC would like to see happen might have some dollars attached to them, and therefore make it a little bit more of an uphill sled to get those things done. And I mentioned briefly before that we're likely to see some bills in the energy sector that would try to preserve the coal industry by slowing down any utility decisions, business decisions, to close out some of these outdated coal-fired plants, or even to transfer them over to a little bit less polluting, but still fossil fuel polluting natural gas. So there's a lot of action we intend to see, or expect to see, not intend, but we expect to see it coming up in this coming session. So I think I'll stop jabbering at that moment and just see if there's questions or discussion on that. Thanks, Harshini.
Thank you so much, David. So if there's any questions, of course, feel free to stop us at any time. But let me just quickly share screen, and we'll, of course, keep some time at the end for any questions that anyone has as well for any of us. So just quickly, I just want to recap kind of what Save the Dunes, how our organization specifically advocates. So we advocate for supporting policies and actions that protect our region of Northwest Indiana. So specifically the Indiana Dunes, Lake Michigan, and the surrounding natural areas, and of course the people in those areas that live, work, and recreate in Northwest Indiana. So we do advocate not only at the state level, but also at the local and federal level as well. So just quickly, we're going to go through the other types of advocacy we do. Of course, this session is specifically focusing on state advocacy, but as I mentioned, we do federal advocacy. So once a year, we always go and bring a small team of Northwest Indiana residents and partners to what we call Great Lakes Days, which is in the beginning of March. This is a picture on the right of us talking to Congressman Yackham of District 2 about some bipartisan Great Lakes water policy issues. So that's one of the many things that we advocate for is GLRI, which is the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. We also advocate for Clean Water Act protections, plastic pollution, and as David mentioned, PFAS, but at the federal level. So a couple of different things that we do advocate for every single year. Local advocacy, just a very big snapshot of what we do there. So we do defend the public trust. The public trust, as you may know, is the right for anybody to freely access and use the shoreline of Lake Michigan in Indiana. This is definitely a state by state doctrine. So different states are varying from Indiana, but we do have it in the state. So we continue to defend the public trust and the public access to our Indiana dune shoreline. One of the other things that we do focus on is water pollution prevention. So many of you probably know this, but there is a lot of heavy industry in this area, specifically in Northwest Indiana, in these three counties of Lake, Porter, and LaPorte County. So working together with the industry to try and drive those pollutions down, but also helping to educate the community members in our area to advocate for their own protections, specifically during public comment periods. And then, of course, helping protect local and natural spaces and sustainability efforts. That's something that we continue to do. We partner with a lot of our environmental partners here in not only in Northwest Indiana, but of course across the state, such as Hoosier Environmental Council. So we do create letters of supports for community groups and advisory committees as well. So that's just a big snapshot of local advocacy. And then, of course, state advocacy, as we were talking about today. So we do have our state legislature session coming up quite soon in a couple of weeks from January to April. So this year coming up will be a budgeting year, so a little bit longer than the one in 2024. So we do at Save the Dunes have a bill watch list. So our amazing community engagement coordinator, M, will be posting that on our socials, which basically on the left here, this was our 2024 bill watch list. It gives us a big kind of summary of the bills that we are watching at Save the Dunes. So we usually limit it to about 10 House and 10 state Senate bills, rather. I know there's a lot of them, but we try and kind of pinpoint the ones that would be most effective and would affect most of the areas in Northwest Indiana the most. We also do testify and advocate for wetland protections, much like Hoosier Environmental Council does. So we do that every year. And then, of course, something we're still looking at the state level is PFAS regulation. And one of the other state bills that did pass this last 2024 session was from our state senator, Rodney Pohl, up here, specifically on public beach equipment. So just different things at the state level, very similar to what we do in the federal and local level, but really honed in on some of the state bills that will affect our region of Northwest Indiana up here. And so I just want to go through how you as the public can advocate. So, there's a lot of different ways you can advocate, especially with the state session coming up very soon, but I just want to go through a couple of them. So letters are a big way that we advocate as well. So submitting any public comment letters during the permit renewal periods or during the times when the committee members in the state legislature are considering a bill. That's a great way to maybe send them either an email or, something like that that says, hey, I'm a constituent and I really care about this bill and here's why. Another way, of course, is voting. So in November, we had a lot of candidates on the ballot. So making sure that you as a constituent are able to use your voice is really, really important. Speaking out, of course, so advocating for any specific bills that you are particularly interested in, and also not only just you advocating for them, but telling your neighbors, telling your friends, telling other partners, and having them advocate as well is a really great great way. And then phone calls, of course, calling your state representatives' offices, so their legislative assistants are listed on the Indiana General Assembly place. So if you would like to call their offices and say, hey, I'm a constituent, I'm really concerned about this particular issue, and then explain why, that's a really great way to advocate as well. And so how individual advocates help us. So I just want to kind of highlight what you do as a general member and why it's so important for all of us to advocate together. So when we do our lobbying, it's effective, but we do so to protect and advocate for the Lake Michigan area and what we are caring about. But I would say that the most effective way is to have a lot of people do it at the same time, right? So if we're one organization saying it, it's not as effective as if a lot of different constituents are saying the exact same thing. And it kind of lifts everyone up and brings the issue to the front as well, especially for a legislature, if they're getting a lot of different phone calls from a lot of different people. So as you have probably understood by now, working with environmental groups across the entire state of Indiana, including Hoosier Environmental Council, on the same initiatives not only helps our voice get louder, but it helps all of ours collectively work together and get a hopefully positive result on a lot of our advocacy efforts. So I just also want to go through why the legislators will most likely listen. So we talked about this a little bit, but you as a constituent that's an important thing. Most times when we talk to either congressional offices or state representative offices, the first question that we do get, most likely the first question we get is, are you a constituent of this district? So it's really, really important as a constituent to reach out to your federal and state representatives and say, hey, you know, I'm in your district. This is why I care about this. And because they basically work for you, they should listen to you and at least understand your opinion and why you feel the way that you feel. So that's a really, really big thing to consider. Information as well. So I love to mention this, but being a constituent in a specific area and seeing what you're seeing makes you an educated constituent. So providing them with good, reliable information, your experiences, especially when it comes to environmental issues, talking about what you have seen as a general citizen of your district is really important. And then knowledge. So I always mention that you do not need to be an expert. You don't need to necessarily have a degree in whatever issue that you're really concerned about, but being from that area and seeing what you're seeing and explaining that to your congressman or your state representatives is really important. And that's valued by them. Comments, of course. So as I mentioned, we do a lot of public comments and written comments to our respective offices, but doing that and making sure they're received is really, really important. And then passion. I would say that if you don't have passion, you're probably not going to get anywhere, especially when it comes to the advocacy work, specifically lobbying work. Putting your own personal story and attaching it to whatever bill or issue that you're concerned about really does make that legislator or staff person remember you and remember your story as well. So that's something that we really strive and encourage everyone to do is attach your personal story to the issue, because if it's really just you talking about a bill, that can be kind of boring, or maybe they don't remember it because it was just a bunch of numbers, right, or whatever. But making it more personal and making it more of a individual story will make them remember you and the issue that you care about. And the personality. So if you are personally affected by the issue, you are a trusted source based on your experience. So like I said, being from that area, having those experiences is extremely important. You can, I would say, have all the degrees in the world, but if you don't have that experience, if you're not from the area, if you don't know what the local people know, that's really not going to get you anywhere. So having that local, regional experience is really, really important. Okay, so I also just want to mention the Indiana General Assembly website. So if you are not aware of who your state representative is, or your federal, rather, actually, so this website, this specific link, will let you find that based on your address. So all you do is you go on the Indiana General Assembly website, you type in your street address and your city, and it'll populate with not only your state representative and your state senator, but also your federal representative as well. So this is a really great website to use, especially with the differences in districts between federal and state. So they're not always the same. So I really highly encourage you to use this if you're not quite sure. It's a really easy resource to use. And that is it. Emma, I will pass it on to you to talk about our socials.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. Feel free to leave any comments or questions in the chat. We haven't had anyone chime in just yet. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. It's really, important to get informed about these sorts of things, and starting from understanding how and why your voice matters, I think is like perfect start to kick off. So thank you both, Maria and David from HEC, for giving us the forecast, and Harshini for showing us the ways in which we're going to need constituents to speak up with us come session time. You're going to see us posting about bills. You're going to see us, now's the time to reach out to your legislators. And we really want you to feel empowered. So we hope that this webinar is kind of giving you the information. So then come session, you guys will be ready to react. So I mentioned that we'll be posting things on socials. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're across all those networking platforms. We also send out a informational newsletter every month that has advocacy updates about what's happening, how you can get involved, what Save the Dunes is doing, what we're uplifting other orgs in the area doing. So please feel free to sign up for that. You can do that all on our website. And if this is a topic that you care about, talk to the people in your life about how they can get involved. Maybe you have some young people in your life that you want to feel like they're getting inspired to know about what's going on and how they can use their voice to speak up for things that they care about. So we'll be putting this recording up. Feel free to share it with your networks and anybody who you think could benefit from this knowledge. So thank you everyone for joining us. We'll open it up. If someone wants to come off mute, feel free to raise your hand. I'll take you off mute. You can come on camera however you feel comfortable doing if anyone has questions.
Hey, while we're waiting for that, let me add a couple things. First of all, I tried to up it in the chat, but was unsuccessful. So maybe Maria is going to be better at that. Just the Hoosier Environmental Council website, like Save the Dunes, has a Bill Watch page, and we also have some really good sort of primers on how to be an advocate. And as Em and Harshini have both explained, it's really quite easy and honestly fun to send off comments, original comments, get hold of your state representative and talk about why this issue affects you and affects you specifically in your district. So take a look at our website, Conservation Law Center website, Save the Dunes website, Indiana Wildlife Federation, wherever you're sort of queued in, and you'll find bill watches, and you'll find ways to make a connection. And then the other point I want to make real quickly before more questions come in is the beauty of getting together with other people, sharing your story with other people, and just encouraging them to spend about 3 minutes putting their letter into their state rep, because they do actually, despite the fact that you're told otherwise, they do actually pay attention to the number of people who intelligently sort of knock on their door and say, hey, this is an issue I care about. So I encourage you to do that.
All right. One comment from Mary. Thanks everyone. Looking forward to everyone raising our voices to protect our state and our health. Thank you, Mary, for joining us this evening. Anyone else? I don't see any hands raised or anything else. I know,
Well, I'm
again,
a
thank you.
lawyer, so I'll jump in here real quick. Can I jump in again? Hey, and
Yes.
that I can't be quiet. I've got a little bit of an audience here, but seriously, one of the things that HEC reacts to, and I'm sure Save the Dunes does too, is if there's an issue that's important to you and you think we need to be speaking a little bit more loudly than maybe you think we are, send us an email and say, hey, look, this is a big issue for me. How can I help you and how can you help me raise our voice and connect with other people who want to raise their voices? It's we're in charge. We hire them to do the things that we want them to do. So that's why I say don't be shy to knock on the door of Save the Dunes or HEC or anybody else who's doing advocacy and join together with us to do these things.
I just wanted to say that I am a professional wetland scientist, so I was closely following the wetlands bill. I do have concerns through this next session on how that's going to maybe possibly come up again. So if you need any help with any of that type of advocacy, I was over at the State House for some of that. So please let me know if you need any help. My name is Amy Noel. I'm with Metric Environmental, and I do a lot of wetland delineations permitting. So I can say that I've seen a lot of difference I've been doing this for like close to 20 years. And I think over the last couple of years, I've seen the most drastic changes in our state. So keeping an eye on that because it directly affects, of course, I have a personal interest in that and also professional interest as well.
Well, thank you, Amy, so much for paying attention to the issue. And I think you did some work in the State House last year too, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that HEC is doing, and I think there's some other folks around the state doing it as well, is kind of keeping track of how these bills, not just 1383 from last year, but I'm going to say 239 from a couple of years ago, have really accelerated the loss of wetlands and the kinds of wetlands that have been lost as a result of that specific state legislation. So yes, reach out to us, and you know,
Yeah,
both me and Maria would be interested with Indra, probably, right?
Yeah, I've worked with a couple of different organizations. Indiana Wetlands Association is a newly formed group of environmental wetland professionals, and we're tracking it through as well. I know with Audubon Society is another one I've worked with. So I've been the most concerned I have been on how the legislation is going as far as environmental protections. So it's something that, I think I've given my card to somebody in your organization and I cannot remember who the person was. But I'll make sure to reach out again in case you need any assistance as far as, talking with legislators, because I can talk to them and literally say, here's what's changed. Here's in my professional life what I've seen change. I wish there was a way that we could track with actual data how much wetland loss there's been. I know IDEM tracks some of that information, but I don't know how much they're tracking it as far as, when we send in a report and they're like, oh yes, this wetland's exempt. This project is going to impact this many acres of wetlands, and actually tracking how much we're losing. Because I think that'd be great data if we could present that data and show here is what we're seeing. And, wetlands are important for flood protection, and, you're taking away something that's becoming even more critical as climate change is happening. So yeah, I'm very interested in seeing if we can figure out a way to collect data and present it.
Thank you for sharing,
Yeah, that's
Amy.
the tricky part.
Yeah. And it's very hard for state organizations to have anything or be involved because of, yeah, where their position is. It could put their position in jeopardy. They're not allowed to say things. I know people in different parts of the state that I work with on a regular basis, and they're concerned about it as well, but they are very limited in what they can do. So that makes it challenging.
Well, I will. Well, if you need to get in touch with anyone from Save the Dunes, our website has all of our information on both my information, Harshini, who's the advocacy coordinator, and our program director, and everyone else. So feel free to
Okay.
connect back with us. We'd love to talk more. And maybe I'm thinking about the wetlands initiative up in Northwest Indiana here. I'm wondering if they are tracking data and loss over the last couple of years, and it's interesting. Yeah. Comment in the chat agrees on tracking wetlands loss.
Yeah.
Right. If
Once
anyone,
again, thank you, Amy, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, and I have a pretty good network of people that are concerned that are also professional wetland scientists or just have worked in the field for many years. So, and we're all concerned and we all do want to help. So, that's something that, it might help to have a team of professional wetland scientists get up there and talk about it.
there's no other questions, then I think we'll wrap up if that's cool with everyone else. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us at the end of the year here. Save the Dunes still has some other programs. I'm sure HEC has some other things on their calendar as well in the next coming weeks. So we thank you all for joining us online tonight, but check out our websites for upcoming things and other ways you guys can get involved. So